one's perception of resistance will be determined by the type of injustice that they go through.
That steadfastness, I'm staying here and I'd rather die on my land than move.
That every soul's going to be held accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to another episode of the Stand4Palestine podcast. Alhamdulillah, we're making our progress and we are at nearly 10 episodes, I believe. And as we talk with every single episode, there are more and more events happening in Palestine, in Gaza, in the region surrounding it. And with all of these events that happen, it just re-emphasizes the importance of all of these topics that we're discussing and the actions that we need to take moving forward. We've got a very exciting topic today. It's a very interesting, very controversial topic perhaps, but it's one that we need to have a conversation that isn't being had enough within our community. And I'm joined by one of our guests, Sister Assala. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Assala Sayara is a known voice in our community, a known voice of the Palestinian activist circles in our community, is a regular voice at our protests. She's an activist, she's a social worker, PhD student, the founder and director of Haweyate, an organization which connects Palestinians to their homeland at a grassroots level. Jazakallah khairan for joining us.
Wa iyak.
There's a lot happening and it's hard to, I think, keep our motivation up as we see all the events unfolding around us. But what I think we really wanted to discuss today is what lies at the heart of the Palestinian resistance. We're reaching the 2-year mark of the genocide at the moment. And there's one clip I remember watching last year that just really reshaped my perspective. It was on the anniversary of October 7, and all of the discussion was about 1 year of genocide.
No.
Now reaching 2 years of the worst genocide that we've seen in our lives. But this brother in the video, and it was Subhi Taha, if you come across him on social media, amazing videos, and he just reframed the way that I thought. He said we shouldn't just think of it as 1 year of genocide.
Yeah.
It's 1 year of resistance.
Yeah.
1 year of the greatest resistance that we've seen in our lifetime, not just the greatest genocide that we've seen in our lifetime.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we often do, is that we discuss what happens to Palestinians rather than what is done by Palestinians.
Yeah.
The actions that we see, the resistance that we see. And what we wanted to unpack today is just really what underlies that psychology. Like, why do Palestinians resist? What is it about the Palestinian struggle that embodies resistance so much, and how can we carry that as humans all over the world? So I guess to start off with, I think if you can help us unpack that, a lot of what you do is about connecting Palestinians to the homeland, understanding what it means. What does being Palestinian mean to you?
I think the question of what it means to be Palestinian is a very individualized question. And I am in full belief that every Palestinian has their own meaning and definition, what it means to be a Palestinian. But there's also that collective sense and experience or the collective definition of what it means to be Palestinian. And the way that I like to frame it is that being Palestinian means where there is pain, there is resistance, and where there is resistance, there is pain. And with the words of, or the way that Subhi Taha, who has contributed highly to understanding resistance, or particularly from the perspective of a Palestinian in the diaspora, which has been crucial and critical in the narrative, and that's why he's been targeted constantly, I guess.
Accounts shut down.
Is that we, of course, can't overlook the level of suffering and agony and pain that the Palestinians go through. But just we can't overlook that, we also can't overlook the continuity and the existence of the Palestinian people. And the reason why I say the continuity is because one of the genocidal aims of the illegal state of Israel is the erasure of the Palestinian people. And we have countlessly heard the Israeli officers, including Netanyahu, come out explicitly saying that they are aiming to erase the Palestinian people. And in saying that, the fact that there are still Gazans on the land of Gaza and Palestinians on the land of Palestine, from the river to the sea, that is a further reinforcement and indication that our existence itself is resistance.
That's right.
But not only existence in the land of Palestine, but also our existence as Palestinians in the diaspora, where there are more than 11 million Palestinians outside Palestine. And at times there's a tendency to really overlook or not consider the journey or the experiences of Palestinians outside Palestine. But they are part of the narrative of resistance, who are an extension of the voices of the Palestinians in Palestine.
Right. You mentioned the people in Gaza holding on to their land.
Yeah.
And we see the amount of pressure that they face to leave. All the pressure on the north, go to the south, go to Rafah, move to here, move to there. And we see so often the refusal to leave their land.
Yeah.
That steadfastness, that I'm staying here and I'd rather die on my land than move.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that gets lost on people that might not have that attachment to their identity, to their, whether it's their land, whether it's their nationality, whether it's to that identity or that concept that they hold on to of resistance. And it seems absurd. Like, why would you hold on to this land over life? But there's something too that isn't there. There's that connection to land, but then there's that stubbornness in continuing to resist and refusing to bow down. What is it? What is it there?
I think I would like to first acknowledge, before going into that, is that there is no judgment on anyone or a Palestinian who leaves Palestine.
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, they are forcibly displaced.
Absolutely.
On the other hand, those Palestinians who still remained on their land, their connection to the land, it doesn't stop at only being on the land, because one's connection is beyond the physical essence. It's an unseen connection. But in saying that, that connection becomes translated at times through language, through action, through behavior, through poetry, through the strength of the iman. And I think it's a type of connection that, number one, where we know that the land is sacred and one must care for the land. And that care for the land is seen in simple actions, but significant actions of, actually, I saw a video of an older aunt kissing the door to her home. And a person who is an outsider may not understand the significance or the essence of what it means to kiss that door.
Yeah.
That door is not just an entrance to a home. That door is an entrance to the level of connection and the level of deepness and the level of trust that these people have taken. And the question is, what type of trust? Al-ard amana. So they are fulfilling the amana and trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them. For me, particularly as a Palestinian who lives outside Palestine, there are moments where I remember when I was on that land, I would speak to the land, where I felt that the land was talking to me, even though that may sound bizarre or may sound so poetic or it may sound unusual, but there is a secret to that land. And not only just for Palestinians. On my previous volunteering trips to Palestine, where I met volunteers from all around the world, they would say the exact same thing
about the Palestinian land.
About the Palestinian land, that there is something unseen but felt on that land, which speaks to one's heart and speaks to one's soul. And why I am in a state of yearn is because I'm yearning for the land.
Mm-hmm. There's an introduction to the book. It's called Palestine Plus 100, and it's just a series of fiction, science fiction, sort of imagining the future of Palestine.
Mm-hmm.
But in the introduction, the author Basma Ghalini, she mentions, I wish I had the passages quoted, but it's just a beautiful description of the connection. She describes Palestinians in the diaspora, looking at the olive trees and seeing the valleys and smelling the flowers and hearing their grandmother cooking, even though they've never actually been to the land.
Yeah.
And it's something that when I read it, and as I could read it, I was like, as I was reading it, I could just picture it in my head, and I was like, I haven't been in years, but anyone that you read that to would feel the exact same thing. Do you think that connection, that mystery of the land, whatever it is, that magic comes from the oppression that's been faced as a significant, contributor to that effect and that connection?
I think the connection existed before the oppression and the occupation, and that's a important note to make. It's because a lot of the talks or the focus could be on how are the Palestinians post-occupation.
Mm-hmm.
But Palestinians had a livelihood from the land pre-1948. So that connection has been existing since our ancestors existed on that land. So it only grew, I believe, or it was tested through the oppression and through the occupation. And that's and that could be exemplified through the tactics of the Israeli occupation.
Absolutely.
Where Judaization is a tactic that they try to apply, where they geographically try to change the appearance of the land and change what's on the land to remove the authenticity of the land. For example, there are more than 300 Israeli settlements in the West Bank, and if you were to look at the settlements, you would just feel and see that it is out of place. It is out of place. But when you hear the land, and I say you hear the land because the land speaks, you hear it say, Ana Arabi, Ana Palestini. So despite their attempt to erase the authenticity of the nature of the buildings, of the homes, they have failed.
That's right.
Yeah.
You hear the stories of the burning of the olive trees.
Yes.
Bringing in native European trees.
Yes.
And because of that, we see bushfires because the trees are not native to the land and they're not native to that environment and to that climate, and as a result, they don't prosper there.
Yeah.
Just to exemplify that point. Let's get to the topic of resistance. We don't need to go into the history. We know what happens. 1917, 1948. The land is occupied. The Nakba, and we see resistance naturally come about among the Palestinian people.
Yeah.
We see it earlier against the British when they first came. We see the Arab revolts through the 20s and the 30s, and then we see obviously the Zionist entity being created, and the Nakba and the various sort of struggles afterwards.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is natural to every struggle that we see. Every colonizer and colonized have had some level of struggle.
Yeah.
The people fighting back, trying to maintain their autonomy, trying to maintain their power over their land or over their own future. But there's something different about the Palestinian struggle, and I don't say this out of some like nationalistic sentiment, but the whole world sees it today.
Yeah.
You look at the Muslim world, you look at the Arab world, and
Yeah.
everyone has realized that the entire Arab world is colonized except for Gaza, or except for Palestine.
Yeah.
And actually, it's the rest of them that have probably given up their resistance efforts decades or centuries ago. The Palestinian people continue to show their resistance and their steadfastness today.
Yeah.
growing up, you always see, or you look at the Palestinian people, you hear that كل واحد حامل قضية. Every single person, every individual feels like I am the one carrying the burden of the struggle.
Yeah.
What is it that's made this struggle so significant? And it's probably a tough one to answer because
I think it's tough, but it could be simple to answer. الظلم, the injustice.
Yeah.
الظلم مأساة. In saying that, when injustice cuts deep, it only calls for a deep response. And resistance is a area that could be very fluid, where every single person will get to express what resistance means to them, because when one experiences occupation and injustice, what they bear or how they bear what they go through will determine their behavior, that they will respond. So what I'm saying is that I don't get to judge how another person resists when they go through a type of abuse or a type of injustice or a type of oppression. So in saying that, there is no room for anyone to judge how Palestinians resist, particularly at a time where we have reached a stage of rage and a stage where the brain and the eyes do not comprehend what they are seeing. So in saying that, one's resistance could mean raising a child who's aware of Palestine. Another person's resistance might mean refusing to go back to Palestine if the occupier's there. And these are just examples that I share from people I've heard. Now, my example of resistance was at a time where I was learning about personal power in my degree in social work, and I was going back home to Palestine, and as we were going through the King Hussein Bridge, I got to the Israeli checkpoint. The Israeli occupiers had taxed my family and I with an amount of $10,000.
Wow.
And it got down to giving us two options, which was to give up on our Palestinian passport and pay and not pay the $10,000, or to not give in our Palestinian passport and Haweyate and to pay the $10,000. My way of processing that traumatic experience was conceptualizing my personal power to refuse and letting go of my Palestinian identity.
Yeah, absolutely.
As resistance. So one's perception of resistance will be determined by the type of injustice that they go through.
It's funny you mentioned that, because there's so many examples of it that we see, like even as kids growing up. To be honest, not just probably every Muslim household that you'd see, any map, any atlas, any globe that you see, you've got like the Israeli flag sort of crossed or scribbled out, or the name of the country.
Yeah.
And that's just the most simplest form, right? It's just refusing to acknowledge the terms that are imposed upon us.
Yeah.
It's a sunnah.
Yeah.
The Prophet ﷺ, when he was in Mecca, and Abu al-Hakam
Yes.
was the leader of Quraysh that oppressed the Muslims. The Prophet ﷺ said, don't call him Abu al-Hakam, his name's Abu Jahl, not the father of wisdom, he's the father of ignorance. And whoever calls him Abu al-Hakam is not from my ummah.
No.
And it's just using that language to not
Yeah.
accept the titles that the occupiers or that the oppressors give themselves.
Yeah.
SubhanAllah, Palestine has become a symbol of resistance all over the world, all over the ummah.
Yeah.
I think of, the struggle of the Kashmiris. Kashmir is occupied land.
Yes.
By India, by the Hindu extremists, and very much their struggle resembles a Palestinian struggle in a lot of ways. One thing that amazed me was seeing about a year ago videos of Kashmiri resistance fighters recording their fights against Indian army who are coming in to occupy the land and forcing them, removing them from their homes and so on. And as they're recording these videos, they're putting the red triangle over the Indian soldiers that they're fighting against. It's just become this like symbol. Bangladesh last year, and they had these massive riots and revolution against their government with their oppression. And all of the youth in the street, their struggle is against their government.
Yep.
But they're waving the Bangladesh flag with the Palestinian flag.
Yes.
In Syria, we saw the same thing. There were only 3 flags, either their national flag, and the Palestinian flag, or the flag of Islam. And they were the only flags that they identified with. Somehow this symbol has become just synonymous with the resistance because of how much it's carried on. If I can add one point, it's just that I think a lot of this comes back to, it's a point of aqidah for us.
100%.
The Prophet ﷺ said there is a group of my ummah who will continue to fight until the day of judgment in defiance of truth and triumphant, and they will remain triumphant. And the abandonment of the people will not affect them. They're in Ard al-Maqdis and its surroundings. So subhanAllah, there's a very strong connection there religiously, culturally, any occupied people and occupiers, and it just really, really symbolizes that.
Yeah. I think the experience of Palestinian resistance has become a window to how other oppressed people have resisted colonization and occupation. And we've been able to see the intersection between Palestinians but also Aboriginal people on this land and how they have resisted colonization or settler colonialism.
Yep.
And the question is that when there is resistance, it is usually grounded in something or it's anchored in something. And at times there is a sense of pushback when it comes to understanding the role of Islam and the role of faith in resistance, or the role of faith actually, or spirituality in the Palestinian identity. And that's something that I have personally faced on the ground, where at times there's been attempts to define who I am as a Palestinian.
To define it for you.
Yeah, to
Yep.
define it for me.
Yep.
But in saying that, my Palestinianness is my faith, and my faith is my Palestinianness. And our faith, or the faith of Islam, for me, personally, it's a holistic faith. It covers every aspect, including how to resist, but including how to stand against injustice. So as I'm saying that, and I want to stress this out, is that our faith, like the deen of Islam, has particularly taught us on opening the door or opening the space for all people, right? Lakum dinakum waliya dini.
Sure.
There's respect for you and there's respect for me as well. So in saying that, one doesn't have to let go of their Islamic or Muslim or the identity of Islam when they are resisting or when they are being a Palestinian in the West. But rather use it to build connection and respect amongst the differences. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's they're so deeply tied, like you said, and to be honest, the current struggle in Gaza has probably been one of the biggest examples of that, obviously,
Yes.
seeing the faith of the people in Gaza,
Yep.
but also how it's opened the eyes of non-Muslims to what Islam is. In a post-war and terror world where
Yes.
the idea of a Muslim has been so stigmatized, to see so clearly demonstrated to the world what it means to hold on to Islamic faith.
Yep.
What resistance looks like from an Islamic perspective, what a military struggle looks like from an Islamic
Yep.
perspective, and having that redefined from a lot of the ideas or misrepresentation that a lot of people might have had. You know, I think we haven't seen more people enter Islam than we have in the last 2 years on the back of Gaza.
100%.
And a lot of that is because, like you said, the struggle goes hand in hand.
I actually got a message today, of course, within confidentiality, from someone who said, I think I want to convert to Islam.
SubhanAllah. And
And who I
that's
met
right.
through this cause. Yeah.
Anyone in that space says the same thing, that
Yeah.
they haven't seen such a rise in the numbers, and they're just so sort of intrinsically tied. You mentioned earlier, I guess, other people judging how Palestinians resist, and I wanted to unpack that a little bit, because we do see a lot of responses. We see condemnation,
Yes.
but then also we see, you know, within our own circles, whether it's among the Muslim community, whether it's among those who might support the Palestinian cause, criticisms
Yes.
of the actions taken by Palestinians, whether it's armed resistance,
Yeah.
whether it's any other form, but especially armed resistance, where
Yeah.
we see questions, you know, for example, a Palestinian might resist, take a certain action, a certain military action, and inflict a certain blow on the occupiers. In response, we see the occupiers in their barbarity and their cruelness wipe out thousands,
Yeah.
if not more.
Yeah.
And the criticism that comes back was, is your act of resistance worth it? All it's led to is more oppression. What do you have to say to that?
I think the question should be not about the legitimacy of resistance. The question should be about the legitimacy of the colonizer. And the colonizer does not have a right to exist.
Yep.
So in saying that, every form of resistance has a right to exist, whether it's everyday acts of resistance or armed resistance, because it is internationally recognized that an oppressed people have a right to resist, including armed resistance. And I will say that in the last 2 months, probably, I've been just looking at the files of Palestinian hostages and just really
Yes.
trying to understand their stories and their experiences, because I feel like they should not be the forgotten people. There are over 10,000 Palestinians who are suffering at the hands of the Israeli occupying forces. And I was coming across a young female, forgot her name, but who was studying in Berzit University in Ramallah. The perceived crime, or the crime that was attached to her name, was that because she was organizing on university grounds and raising awareness of what's happening in Palestine, and she was part of a collective who was mobilizing against the occupation. So every act of resistance is seen as a threat to the existence of the occupation. Therefore, every act of resistance is framed through their propaganda as a crime,
Yes.
where the only crime should be the existence of the Israeli occupation. And post the 7th of October, through the power of social media and really bringing forward the truth and the light of what's happening on the ground, the myth and the Zionist propaganda has had its mask fallen. That resisting doesn't mean you are a terrorist.
Yes.
Resisting means that you are a human who has a right to resist. And that resisting doesn't mean that you are anti-Semitic, but rather resisting means that you are Semitic, and that Zionism actually is anti-Semitism. So the last 2 years have become a window into the fallacy of the Western world that has presented itself to be, countries of the freedom of speech.
Absolutely.
But when that speech targets a government, that speech becomes targeted by the government.
Yes.
Where the freedom of speech actually has a line, because speech is resistance.
Yes, absolutely.
And speech is powerful because when there is nothing left in this world, there are words that could be used to tell the truth. And the occupation and the genocide sympathizers don't want the truth to come out, but the truth has only come out.
That's right, absolutely. I think the entire Western world order has come crumbling on the back of Gaza. And we haven't seen the downfall yet. We haven't seen the effects and the fallout.
And that the status quo shouldn't be followed. And one doesn't have to be politically correct.
Yeah.
And that's why the actions on the ground, whether the protests or the petitions or wear a kufiya at school or any picket lines or any sort of actions have become powerful because they are against the status quo and even a threat to existing governments like the Labour government, where there's been a questioning of what does it actually mean to be Australian? Does it mean to accept a genocide? Does it mean to remain silent? Does it mean to accept that there are parts of F-35 jets that are being built on this land? I was just thinking about it this week. I'm like, Ya Allah, I'm on this land. Parts of the F-35 jets are being built here that are used to rain down bombs on kids.
Yeah.
Like, I was trying to comprehend it. So there is a connection between the resistance back in Palestine, the resistance of the Shaib, the people in different parts of the world, but also the resistance that we've seen here.
Yep, absolutely. It inspires that.
Yes.
Courage, that steadfastness. And obviously example that comes to mind is like Palestine Action in the UK.
Yeah.
And the stuff that they've done. It's very direct action
Yes.
and there's repercussions for them. Like there's very real repercussions. They're labeled as terrorists.
And unfortunately, or fortunately, I will say, to be part of this movement, there will be a cost.
Absolutely.
There will be a cost.
But the courage to accept that cost, a lot of it draws from what we see from Gaza.
Yes.
And their steadfastness. And it's like, well, if that's what they've suffered,
Yes.
what effect is a bit of money? What effect is a job? What effect is a legal case? What cost is that to bear when they're losing their children and they're losing their homes?
And I can say that I have met so many people whose stories have not been shared.
Yeah,
Stories from the community who have been really affected
Absolutely.
for speaking up.
absolutely.
And they have been targeted in their homes. But they've chosen morality and being a person of principle and ensuring that they are comfortable within themselves, because when you stand up, you are standing up for your own self. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about, I guess, how we draw on that and what we can apply. I just wanted to mention one thing as well that you sort of touched on about the I guess, military resistance or armed resistance. It's not a concept that's foreign to the occupier. They understand it very, very well. They talk about, Israel has right to defend itself. because they feel like that they've faced an act of oppression in their terms, and therefore they now have to take military action, even if there are civilians that are killed as a result, so that they can achieve justice somehow or another. They very much understand this concept, but they don't see the plight of the Palestinians as a worthy one. They don't see the Palestinians as human beings who are worthy of resisting in their shape or form.
Yeah.
The struggle itself doesn't exist for them, but they very much understand the concept that armed responses are a justifiable thing. They just can't fathom that the Palestinians are human enough to be able to resist themselves. And I think that's really something that we need to draw on. There's, alhamdulillah, I think we've moved very much past that. But very early on in the genocide, every single person was always asked, do you condemn October 7? Do you condemn October 7? And a lot of the responses were, yes, I condemn X, Y, Z, but... And even that initial condemnation is problematic in many ways. Putting aside October 7 in and of itself, the focus on framing any act of Palestinian resistance as something condemnable, as something that we need to comment on, rather than having the focus on the greater oppression in that moment. And that's something that, alhamdulillah, I think we've moved on quite a bit in the last 2 years, as the genocide has gotten worse. But I think it's important that we just sort of keep that in context.
Yeah, I guess to limit the conversation around what's happening today, for example, what happened yesterday or what happened on the 6th of October, because on the 6th of October, Gaza was sieged.
That's right.
On the 8th of October, Gaza was sieged. On the 7th of October, Gaza was sieged. So the conversation should be around the ongoing occupation and colonization of Palestine, and it should be focused on the fact that any act of resistance that comes from a Palestinian is criminalized, because the existence of a Palestinian itself is criminalized by the occupation.
That's right.
So anything that comes from a Palestinian, even if you're trying to seek education, even if you're trying to go from one city to another, is seen as not your right by the occupier, because the occupier has stolen every right from the Palestinian, from the freedom of movement, from the freedom of speech, from the freedom of seeking education, from the freedom of seeking proper health service, from the freedom of building community and family, from the freedom of practicing your religious practices. So, because in the eye of the occupier we are seen as subhuman, we must regain our agency and humanity through any act of being an existence.
Let's move on from talking about how the occupier sees Palestinian resistance. Let's talk about how our community sees Palestinian resistance.
Yeah.
Whether it's a Muslim community, whether it's more broadly, the pro-Palestine movement, Muslim, non-Muslim, all over the world. Do you think that are we where we need to be? Do we see Palestinian resistance the way that we need to? Are there gaps?
I think we've come a long way. We have come a long way, because when I'm saying resistance is justified when Palestine is occupied, I hear people saying it.
Yeah.
And people understand it.
Whereas 2 years ago, they may be mumbling and it was quiet at that moment compared to other
Exactly. And even when Yemen turn, make us proud, turn another ship around. So we've come a long way, where even children have started to really explore what it means to be a hero from the Palestinian experience, from the
absolutely.
Palestinian perspective. So I can say that Palestinians or our community has come a long way, because because I actually feel through the discourse around Palestinian resistance, they've been able to enter another world, which I question. I'm moved by the resistance of my own people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes I'm like, Ya Allah, like the amount of strength and resilience that my people have is to be admired. And I will say that there has been so many moments in my life where it was the resistance and the resilience and the steadfastness of my people that gave me strength in my own life. So the collective is personal as well.
Yep. You said we've come a long way.
Yeah.
Do we still have more to go?
Yes, we do.
Where are the gaps?
Gap number one. I think the first gap is acknowledging and putting into practice that Palestinians are experts of their own lives.
Okay.
What I mean by that is that in the Palestinian movement, there will be many questions about what do Palestinians want. And there's a tendency of people who may not understand the Palestinian struggle or who may not understand what it means to be Palestinian. They are an outsider. They try to define what Palestinians want. We must take a step further and ask, what do you want as a Palestinian? And every Palestinian may say something different.
That's right.
Right? And that must be respected. But a white man doesn't have a right to decide what Palestinians want. Because throughout history, it has always been a white man to come and to put forward a solution for what Palestine may need.
That's right. And it's both in terms of solutions as well as ways to get there and the acts of resistance that are
and
allowed.
The strategies and
absolutely.
ways to get there. Particularly when, what was his name? How can I forget? The United States of America president. Oh my gosh,
Biden?
Assala.
No.
Not Biden. The one now.
Trump.
Astaghfirullah, I lost it. Trump. How can I forget his name? Not that I want to remember his name. When he moved the embassy, the American embassy to Jerusalem, and then there was a conversation around Jerusalem being the capital city of Israel. I remember during that time, I was like, hold on. Who are you to come and define or dictate on what Palestine should look like? And that just has been seen in indirect experiences on the ground, that sometimes there's a tendency to define what Palestinians want without hearing what Palestinians actually want.
Yep.
Right? So we shouldn't please the white man. We shouldn't please Western media. We shouldn't please the eyes of Western media. I believe that the continuity of the movement should be anchored around the voices and the stories and the experiences who have first-hand impact from the Israeli occupation.
Yeah. You mentioned the ways they resist as well, and I think that's an important one.
Yeah.
as I said when we started off, we speak about what happens to Palestinians, but not how they respond. There's this powerful quote, and it's so strong that you hear it and you think, which, Palestinian figure, resistance leader said this, but it was from one of the US college campus encampments.
Yeah.
And it was that those who are in solidarity with our corpses,
Yeah.
but not with our rockets,
Yeah.
are hypocrites and not of us.
Yes.
You don't stand in solidarity with us as we're dying, but then
Yeah.
criticize or condemn as we're resisting. And I think that's an important point. It's not just the occupation that condemns.
Yeah.
It's also people who might be sympathetic to the cause
Yeah.
or within the cause,
Yeah.
but also critical.
And that's why, like, when you are being introduced to the movement or becoming involved in the movement, reflection is required. Why are you part of the movement? Are you part of the movement because you want to be comfortable with yourself? Or what's the end goal? Or do you want to ensure that the systems of injustice are being addressed wholeheartedly? And in saying that, one must ask themselves, how do you feel about the Palestinian resistance? Are you neutral about it? Because to be with the Palestinians is to be with their pain, and it is to be with their resistance.
Yep.
And Palestinians have tried many forms of resistance, diplomatic ties, looking for different agreements, a mediator. And we just saw, the recent attack on Doha.
Yeah, that's right.
Where Doha's supposed to, or the Qatari government was supposed to be the mediator. And right, Israel, because it's on top of the world, it attacked Qatar, I guess. So in saying that, the colonizer does not want a solution. The colonizer wants to erase the indigenous people. And that has been the goal of the Israeli occupation from day one.
One of the best justifications that I've heard for Palestinian armed resistance comes from Ghassan Kanafani. He was interviewed with ABC in Australia, and he was asked, why don't you talk? And he says, to who? To the Israeli leaders. And he says, do you want a conversation between the neck and the sword?
Yeah.
How can there be a conversation between the occupier and myself?
Yeah.
They've got their swords on our necks. What dialogue is there to be had?
Yes.
And like you said, every single one of these avenues has been attempted.
Yeah.
The peaceful protests have been attempted. The strikes have been attempted. The boycotts have been attempted.
And
And they're always met with military responses.
When we've seen that in Gaza,
Yeah.
the Great March
That's
of
right.
Return, Razan al-Najjar, who is one of the Palestinian martyrs who was killed, who was a nurse on the ground trying to help on the ground. She was targeted. She was attacked. She was attacked. So the Gazans and all Palestinians have tried numerous ways of resisting, as simple and as significant as well as holding a rock.
Yeah.
But holding a rock and fighting with a rock is seen as a crime. A child as young as 5 years old could be taken into an Israeli prison for holding and throwing a rock.
And it's not just the Palestinians, it's also those who try to support from outside.
Yes.
The Sumud flotilla now is
yeah.
perfect example. And it's important that we keep focus on them as well. May Allah give them
Ameen.
steadfastness and security and success in their efforts
Ameen.
as they're on the way, and maybe within sort of 10 days or so we'll reach Gaza, inshallah. Just for riding their boats and trying to break the siege.
Yep.
With the previous efforts where the Zionists have boarded the boats, where they've killed the people on the boats,
Yeah.
where they've arrested them, where they've detained them.
Yes.
And then most recently, where in the Tunisian waters, they've bombed 2 of the boats with their drones, attacking civilians, normal humans who are traveling in international waters or in protected waters of other nations.
Yes.
And they're met with military responses.
Yes.
It shows you that there's no dialogue to be had. There's no success to be achieved in dialogue with a military occupation. And, as you said, Palestinians have been saying this for decades.
Yes.
The only response to military occupation is a military response. What other option is left on the table for them?
Which is, as I say, it's a recognized right. It's a moral right.
Absolutely.
And which leads me to say that every form of resistance is legitimate.
What other gaps are there
خط أحمر.
Yeah, absolutely. What other gaps are there in how our community sees Palestinian resistance?
I think another factor that I'd like to maybe touch on, the difference between cultural appreciation and cultural appropriation, which is part of resistance, because for us Palestinians, culture is a huge part of resisting, because culture in itself says, or it tells the Palestinian story and the Palestinian history pre-1948. And there could be at times the Palestinian culture can be appropriated instead of appreciated. And that's why education has been a key source in the community, actually, that many people have taken on the path to seek knowledge and education about Palestinian culture to ensure that they don't fall in the gap of cultural appropriation. I think another gap that I probably should think about.
Maybe there's one that I can ask. A lot of people don't see their role in the liberation of Palestine. And they see it
that
as the role
one.
of others.
Yeah.
You know, we comment on one thing that you hear quite commonly in our community, for example, is you look at the people of Gaza and how they resist.
Yeah.
And we say that, mashallah,
Yeah,
their
yeah.
iman levels, they've memorized the Quran,
Yeah.
they've done this and they've done that.
Yeah.
And that's why they resist.
Yep.
But before you start speaking about politics or before you go out to protest,
Yeah.
why don't you build your iman? Why don't
Yeah.
you memorize the Quran?
Yeah.
And then you can do what they've done. That
Yeah.
there's a prerequisite to resistance, which is that you have to be, you know, iman up here, wali of Allah, or memorizer of the Quran, or that you have to be some sort of superhuman or superhero.
Yep.
What do you say to that? Like, how do you push people out of that mindset?
I think I would say that every soul's going to be held accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I genuinely believe that the last 2 years has been a test to where people could be in their level of commitment, not only to the people of Gaza, but commitment to their own selves.
Yep.
And in saying that, and this does not come from a place of judgment, one should be questioned on what am I doing,
Yep.
not on what is he or she doing. And if we wait for the outcome, or we act upon the outcome, we don't worship the outcome. We shouldn't be worshipping the outcome.
We don't control the outcome either.
Because we don't control
That's
it.
right.
Right? And I say this from a Muslim perspective, is that we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have been given an amana. When I say amana, I say every part of our existence and being and everything that we have, whether our fingers, our hands, our eyes, our voice, our anything, it's an amana. And if Allah has given us all of that, we must use it. We must use it. And that's why there's a dua that we always say, inshallah, Allah yasta'milna wa la yastabdilna. Because if we're not used for this, then what are we going to be used for?
That's right.
And this is a reminder to myself first.
And I think we often we over-glorify Palestinian people, the people of Gaza. We think that they're on a certain level when they're humans just like
They're
you and I,
human.
just like all of us.
one's level of iman doesn't dictate the fact that they don't go through psychological pain and trauma.
Absolutely.
And we've seen that, from the stories of the prophets when they went into the battlefields, that it was difficult, it was hard. Doesn't mean that their level of iman was low. No.
Absolutely not.
So the people of Gaza may have a high level of iman, but it doesn't mean that they don't suffer. It doesn't mean that they are not traumatized. It doesn't mean that psychologically they are in a state of what we would say continuous trauma, because the source of that trauma has not stopped. And we're speaking about trauma that's intergenerational trauma.
Mm-hmm. And subhanAllah, one thing that you see is that when the stories come out, even the mujahideen on the ground, the resistance fighters, there was one recently who passed away, and his family sort of wrote a bit of like a eulogy, and they said he's a lawyer who didn't believe in international law. Right? But what stood out to me is he's a lawyer. And how many lawyers do we have in our community? Right? How many of the average people? You don't need to be a certain type of person to carry the resistance as an effort, right?
Yeah.
It's something that you recognize is a responsibility, and that you recognize is a duty upon me, and therefore I have to do it. If I'm not at the level required to do it, I do it anyway, and I improve myself. I don't improve myself waiting until I'm at a level to do what I can. You do both simultaneously. You don't stop your acts of resistance and activism and so on, waiting for a magic day when you reach a level that,
No.
And none of us will overreach.
And I think everyone will have different means and different capabilities and skills that could be used in how they contribute or how they resist.
Absolutely.
And that's not to say that one who is a lawyer and seeking justice through law can't achieve something, but they could achieve things. However, we can't overlook that there's systematic injustice that they are trying to fight with.
That's right.
So the way that I personally see it is that everyone will have their own experience with the occupation. And with their experience, they'll have different skills. They'll have a smaller purpose for a larger purpose.
That's right. I want you to touch on that a bit more, I think, maybe as a closing point, about the responsibility of everyone else in carrying this struggle away from Gaza and away from Palestine. I think the people of Gaza have done their part. We talk about their struggle and as if it's their struggle. And we talk about their resistance as if it's their resistance, but then we take that responsibility off of our backs. And the one thing that it reminds me of is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes us in the Quran, Musa alayhi salam telling Bani Israel to enter Al-Quds, udkhulu al-ard al-muqaddasata allati kataba Allahu lakum. Enter Al-Quds that Allah has promised you.
Yes.
And then they say, Inna fiha qawman jabbarin, there's repressive people in there. If we enter, we're going to be attacked. Lan nadkhula abadan. As long as they're there, we're not going to enter. And they say, Ya Musa, inna lan nadkhulaha abadan ma damu fiha. Fadhhab anta wa rabbuka faqatila innaha huna qa'idun. Go, you and Allah, and you fight. And we're going to sit here and watch. And in a lot of ways, that's the mentality that we've adopted. We celebrate Gaza for their steadfastness. We mourn their shuhada, their martyrs. We celebrate their resistance. We congratulate their resistance. We support their resistance. But then we don't carry that burden on our back. We say, Gaza, you and Allah, you go fight. You have Allah with you. We're sitting here and watching. Talk to me about that. Like, what's the role of the rest of us, the Ummah, in taking that burden off of Gaza's back and really carrying the struggle and liberating them from the oppression that they're under?
I think the role that we have is just as significant, if not more, because the privileges that we have are not to be abused. And why do we have to wait when it literally hits our door to move mountains? So in saying that, to be with Palestine, is to be with it in everything. In through its suffering, through its history, through its resistance. We don't get to decide when we can stand for Gaza. And that's why I say it about myself, that it requires a soul commitment. Because no borders, no oceans, must dictate on how we contribute. What dictates is us from the inside. And in saying that, when it's from the inside, it's something that must be passed down. Why do you think where we are today? It's because of the generations that existed before us, and they held it and they passed it down.
That's right.
If it wasn't for our ancestors, if it wasn't for our elders, which I believe should be highly respected, if it wasn't for those who have held it and have chosen Palestine in every intricate detail, then Palestine would have not been the cause of the world today.
That's right.
And the Palestinian cause was a forgotten cause for a period of time, for a long period of time. It must live not only externally, but internally. But the internal must be reflected in the external. And that's why when the Freedom Flotilla is making its mission to Gaza, and that's why when the marchers are marching on the streets, that's why when the teachers are educating about Palestine, that's why when there are panels speaking about Palestine, they serve the cause that no matter what the Israeli occupation does, there will be people, even if they kill certain individuals, even if they kill, as much as they kill, the Palestinian cause must be held into, and it is held onto, to ensure that it continues.
Absolutely. I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Yeah.
That Palestine is an amana.
It is.
Gaza is an amana. Masjid al-Aqsa is an amana.
Oh.
As a holy site. And it's a responsibility for every single one of us to carry with us in every way that we can.
It is.
Despite those moments of hardship. Because that's what we learn from the resistance of the Palestinian people themselves.
100%.
Jazakallah khairan for joining us. I think it's
وإياك.
been enlightening to explore what it means to resist. And it's important for all of us to reflect on that, on how we can continue to carry that mantra, to carry that responsibility, to do what we can for the sake of Gaza.
Inshallah.
And may Allah Azza wa Jal give freedom to the people of Gaza.
Ya
May
Rab.
He allow us to continue to be used for this cause and not replaced.
Ameen, Ya
And
Rab.
may He allow us to see and visit a liberated Palestine, inshallah.
Ya Rab.
Jazakallah khairan, everyone who's tuning in and watching on the podcast. Make sure that you like, make sure that you follow, make sure that you subscribe, turn on the notifications, do all of those things that you have to do. And we've got a lot of exciting guests coming on, a lot of exciting topics that we're exploring, and we all keep trying to do what we can. So Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.